Good day, good Saturday to you. Welcome to the Breaking Chains Book Club, where we read books related to true crime together and talk about them. And the whole idea of that and of this channel is to get inside the minds of people and understand where they're coming from. And there's my co-reader if she wants to read with me. There's other people are invited to come and read as well, but Cinnamon Girl has been a great reader with me. So there's the link. I hope you've all had a fantastic week. Mine was okay. Let me just be clear about that. My week was okay. I really missed being live here and on my other channel. I had some unanticipated issues at my house that cut me off for at least 3 days. But also, I was planning to stream the Donna Adelson trial, which got at the very last minute because of manipulation from Charlie Adelson, in my opinion. We could not start that trial. So I'm thinking about what other trial to start streaming soon. But in the meantime, we are here to read Matthew Perry's Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing. We got through the third chapter. Hey, Harlot, nice to see you. We are now on one of the interludes that comes between chapters. These are little interludes, little stories that help set the foundation for Matthew Perry's story. But so far, what we've heard from in this book is about how essentially Matthew Perry, from the time he was very, very young, felt abandoned, felt alone, felt torn between two families. The one he had in Canada and his father in LA, who was an aspiring actor. And his father was the Old Spice man, the guy who was part of the Old Spice commercials from a while back. And he was the one who would say, you know, you need some Old Spice. You could use some Old Spice. So Matthew Perry, aspired to be an actor as well, came to Hollywood. At first, he thought he was going to be a tennis champion, but realized pretty quickly that he was outranked by all the LA kids who had the ability to practice year round when he was, locked down from the snow for, several months out of the year. So he couldn't compete on the tennis on the tennis court at the level he wanted to. So then he started going after acting gigs, and really young, he was getting into some, interesting acting gigs. And we just heard the story in the last stream of how he got Friends. And it was really a very interesting story because he and his friend were up for the same role, and he thought his friend was going to take that role, but his friend declined that role in front of him on a payphone, leaving the opening for him. And, that friend, I think it's Craig Bierkin, he, will have to live for the rest of his life knowing that he could have gotten the role of Chandler Bing. But really, Matthew Perry was really made for that role, and he made it his own. And as we know, Friends went on to be a very great sitcom for many years. However, Matthew Perry the entire time was struggling with his addiction. And the idea of reading this book is helping to understand that, really right before he was murdered, he had just allegedly murdered, I have to say, he was, there's Cinnamon. Hello. I'm just going through kind of what we know so far. But, as he was going through, his addiction in his role, he was really struggling, to the point of he was definitely an alcoholic. He drank alone. He ended up, the first chapter of the book details how his bowels literally exploded, and he was in the hospital for months with a colostomy bag. And so, you know, his addiction put him through hell, and we're reading about more of that hell. And but just before he was quote unquote murdered, um, he wrote this book, he published this book, and he went on a book tour, and he seemed to be doing great. He seemed to be alive and well and happy and recovered, and it was a nice story arc, right? It was a wonderful story arc. But then all of a sudden he ends up dead in his hot tub, and they thought it was an accidental overdose. Well, but it wasn't really. He was being sold at an exorbitantly high price, this ketamine treatment that really he got addicted to. So, hey, Cinnamon, how are you?
Hello, hello.
Hello. How have you been? How's your week going?
Week is going well. It's been very busy with work, and I just got back from my. I go to a dance class on Saturday, so
Ooh,
I'm glad you started a little bit late because it allowed me to get here and sort of get myself showered and all of that before I hopped on.
that sounds like, if you don't mind me asking, what kind of dance is it?
Yeah, so one of my good friends is she's a dance instructor, and she has her own sort of flavor of dance called Vitamin D, which is really kind of cool. So it's a combination of, I would say, Zumba and salsa and a little hip hop and you name it. But it's very energizing. It's really dance fitness, but it's so much fun. And, I go 2 or 3 times a week because it's like my therapy.
That's awesome. It sounds like fun. I remember vividly, I used to not, hey Sharon, nice to see you. I used to not, I've never really loved exercise, but I always did it. I don't as much now, but at the time and I ran, and I didn't really like running. I would train for marathons, but I didn't like doing it. And someone told me, if you're going to, you need to find an exercise that you actually like and enjoy doing, so that it's not a chore for you. And like, that whole concept was so foreign to me. I was like, oh wow, that's interesting, something I like doing. And actually it really worked out well, because then I started roller skating and I started playing volleyball, and I got just as much fitness from that as whatever.
Oh, absolutely. Volleyball is intense. My younger son plays volleyball,
Yeah.
and he gets he's a personal trainer, but
Mm.
he gets, we talked about it today. He gets as good of a workout aerobically, but it's also, you're using your muscles, you need strength, you need timing and strategy. And it's a great sport for him. But you're absolutely right. You need to find something that you love. And I have danced pretty much all my life. So it's a thing that I do now. And hopefully as I get older, which I am, um, I'll be able to continue doing it and keep my joints moving and, my mobility and my, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But I started running. I ran too, and I always hated it, but I did the same thing you did, Lynn. We have so many things in common. I know. But I started training for marathons. I did all that, and I, at the time I thought it was like a really great thing to do. But once I got done with running, and I did it because I got an injury and I really shouldn't do it anymore, I was kind of happy.
Yeah. It's like, oh darn.
It's
Oh
like,
darn.
darn. Yeah. I
I
don't have to
know.
go for those 15-mile, training runs anymore that take
Yeah.
like half a day.
Yeah, it takes a lot of freaking time, and you
It does.
shower several times a day, and it's like, yeah.
Right? I know. I know. Yeah.
My volleyball was I played both kinds of volleyball, but my favorite was beach volleyball, and that has you running all over the sand. And
That's so hard. Yeah.
It was great though. I loved it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But real quickly before we start reading, Sharon, I'm so sorry that you're down with the flu. That sucks. I hate the flu. I think we all should. And Solo, if you're still listening, if you're still here, yes, you were first, but I'm sorry that you have bronchitis. So we're going to start our reading. And hopefully, to those of you who are sick or just tired and just want to, relax and hear a couple people read. Oops. A couple people read. We're here for you. So here's the book. I'm going to go ahead. We usually basically read page by page. We trade off pages. So I'll start this week. So here we go. Interlude. Dead. I bought her a ring because I was desperate that she would leave me. I didn't want to be this injured and alone during COVID. I was high on 1,800 milligrams of hydrocodone when I asked her to marry me. I had even asked for her family's blessing. Then I'd proposed, high as a kite and on one knee, and she knew it too. And she said yes. I was in Switzerland at the time at yet another rehab. This one was at a villa on Lake Geneva with its own butler and chef, the kind of luxurious place where you were guaranteed to not meet anybody else, thereby pretty much defeating the purpose of every rehab I had ever heard of. But what it lacked in fellow sufferers, it made up for in the easy availability of drugs, which again, unfortunately, did not differentiate it from other high-priced rehabs. If I can make millions if I sued these places, I could make millions if I sued these places, but it would divert more attention to the situation, which I didn't want to do. I did my usual trick, complaining about intense stomach pain, when in fact I was okay. It still felt like I was constantly doing a sit-up, so it was very uncomfortable, but it wasn't pain. So they'd give me hydrocodone, which, as much as I could actually feel, which turned out to be 1,800 milligrams a day. My God. To put that in perspective, next page,
broke your thumb and had a kind doctor, he or she would probably prescribe you 5.5 milligram pills, not enough to put a dent in this guy. I was also doing ketamine infusions every day. Ketamine was a very popular street drug in the 1980s. There is a synthetic form of it now, and it's used for two reasons: to ease pain and help with depression. Has my name written all over it. They might as well have called it Maddie. Ketamine felt like a giant exhale. They'd bring me into a room, sit me down, put headphones on me so I could listen to music, blindfold me, and put an IV in. That was the hardest part. I'm always a little dehydrated because I don't drink enough water. Big surprise. So finding a vein was no fun. I was like a fucking pincushion by the end of it. Into the IV went a smidge of Ativan, which I could actually feel. And then I was on a ketamine drip for an hour. As I lay there in the pitch dark, listening to Bon Iver, I would disassociate, see things. I'd been in therapy for so long that I wasn't even freaked out by this. Oh, there's a horse over there? Fine, might as well be. As the music played and the K ran through me, it all became about the ego and the death of the ego. And I often thought that I was dying during that hour. Oh, I thought, this is what happens when you die. Yet I would continually sign up for this shit because it was something different, and anything different is good, which just so happens to be one of the last lines of Groundhog Day. Taking K is like being hit in the head with a giant happy shovel, but the hangover was rough and outweighed the shovel. Ketamine was not for me. Back in my room, the butler had laid out more clothes I wouldn't change into. The chef had prepared yet another healthy meal I wouldn't touch. And I went back to looking at Lake Geneva a lot, completely fucking high, but not the
good kind of high, a loopy drunk feeling that I did not enjoy. This is so eerie hearing him talking about ketamine. I was also now somehow engaged. At some point, the rehab geniuses decided that to help my stomach, quote unquote, pain, they'd put some kind of weird medical device in my back but they'd need to do surgery to insert it. So I stayed up all night taking 1,800 milligrams of hydrocodone instead of the next day's, ahead of the next day's surgery. In the operating room, they gave me propofol, you know, the drug that killed Michael Jackson. I learned then and there that Michael Jackson didn't want to be high. He wanted to be out, zero consciousness. And yet another masterful talent taken from us by this terrible disease. I was given the shot at 11 a.m. I woke up 11 hours later in a different hospital. Apparently, the propofol had stopped my heart for 5 minutes. It wasn't a heart attack. I didn't flatline, but nothing had been beating. If I may be so bold, please pursue your reading of this book for 5 minutes. Look at your phone starting now. Insert 5 minutes of your time. That's a long fucking time, right? It is. It actually is. That's a long fucking time. I was told that some beefy Swiss guy really didn't want the guy from Friends dying on his table and did CPR on me for the full 5 minutes, beating and pounding my chest. If I hadn't been on Friends, would he have stopped at 3 minutes? Did Friends save my life again? He may have saved my life, but he also broke 8 of my ribs. As I lay there in agony, the following day, the head doctor waltzed in, all full of himself, and said, "You will get no ketamine here, and if you need to go to rehab, there is one we can send you to." Next page.
I'm already in a fucking rehab, I screamed, and in a rare show of physical anger, I knocked over the table next to me, which was covered in medical supplies. This scared the doctor, and he promptly left the room. I apologized for the mess I had made and got the hell out of there. The rehab I was speaking of had already done a rapid detox, but they put me under for the wrong 2 days. The first 2, it should have been days 3 and 4. By the time I came around, the detox fully hit, and I'd gone from 1,800 milligrams to bupkis. Not much a butler and a chef can do about that. Those 8 broken ribs were, by the way, much the same injury that the New Orleans Saint quarterback Drew Brees suffered in a game in November 2021 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Brees would break 3 more the following week and puncture his lung just to be better than me. But then he missed 4 games, so I'd argue we're at least even, which makes me feel tough. Right in the middle of all this madness, but prior to the rib thing, I took a meeting with Adam McKay about a big movie called Don't Look Up. There was no Chandler that day. I wasn't on. I couldn't get it up for that. We just talked for a while, and as I walked out, I said very calmly, "Well, I'd love to help you in any way I can with this thing." Adam said, "I think you just did." I got the call the following day that he was hiring me. This would be the biggest movie I'd gotten ever. It promised to be a little calm within the storm. I was to play a Republican journalist and was supposed to have 3 scenes with Meryl Streep. Yes, that's right. I got to do a group scene with Jonah Hill, among others, in Boston,
where the movie was filmed. Great movie. I was on 1,800 milligrams of hydrocodone then, but nobody noticed. But with the broken ribs, there was no way I could continue. So I never got to do my scenes with Meryl. It was heartbreaking, but I was in too much pain. God knows how Breeze continued to throw football, but you don't get to do a scene with Meryl Streep with broken ribs. And I couldn't smile without it hurting like fuck. Being in Don't Look Up didn't work out because my life was on fire, but I learned an important lesson. I was hireable in something big without putting on a show. In that meeting, Adam and I had just been 2 men talking. I will treasure that moment, that day, that man. What a good guy. And I sincerely hope our paths cross again. I'll be sure to check. It's actually him next time. That refers back to when he thought a maitre d' was M. Night Shyamalan and went out with him because that's what he thought, and it was. Okay. When it came time to leave Switzerland, I was still on 1,800 milligrams of Oxy every single fucking day. I was told that once back in Los Angeles, I'd still be able to get that much, and I needed it just to stay level. As ever, this was not me getting high. This was purely maintenance, so I didn't go through agonies. I flew back on a private jet. There was no way I could fly commercial, given that everyone would recognize my damn face, and it cost me a cool $175,000 to do so. Back in LA, I went to see my doctor. I need 1,800 milligrams a day, I said. No point beating around the bush. Oh no, she said, we're not giving you that at all. Oh no, she said, we're not giving you that at all. Cancer patients only get 100 milligrams. This only upped my gratitude that I didn't have cancer. But the doctor in Switzerland told me that's what I'd be on when I got home. Oh, they'll consult, she said, but I'm in charge now. Here's 30 milligrams. Next page.
This would not do. I would get incredibly sick. There was only one thing for it. That very same night, I booked another $175,000 private jet and flew right back to Switzerland. I need you to combine my morning and evening dose. I won't try and pronounce this something, the Swiss nurse said. This was going to be a problem. My pressing need to change the rules versus her lack of English. This was all done in some weird German-English game of charades. I don't need a pill at 6 o'clock in the morning. I need it when it's scary at night. I can't find the center of the fear. It's general. Also, I can't sleep, so there's a negotiation every single night with myself. My mind races. The ideas come so fast. I get auditory hallucinations too. I hear voices and conversations, and sometimes I even talk back. Sometimes too, I'll think that somebody wants to hand me something, and I put my hand out to get that nothing from no one. Sober or not, this troubled me a bit. On top of everything else, I was crazy? It's not schizophrenia, just a damn load of voices. The voices, I'm told, do not make me a crazy person. They are called auditory hallucinations, and they happen to people all the time. There is no cure for the voices. Of course there isn't. Actually, I can think of a cure. It's called being somebody else. Either way, I needed those pills as one shot at night without saving any for the morning. Morning, evening, together, I said, miming 8 pills in my hand, not one. I don't know what that says. She said, tomorrow morning, no pill. Now instead, I said, extremely slowly.
Ich habe kein Ahnung. Was sei broken? Oh my gosh, my sorry. My TV just came on totally randomly. Sorry.
That was the command for your TV.
Yeah. I guess my TV understands German. My gosh. You and everyone else. No one knows what I need. Back in LA one more time, trying to sober up. I think, wait, how did I get engaged? There are dogs living in my house. How did this happen? I had asked her parents, begged for her hand while high, and put up with the dogs. That's how scared I was of being abandoned. Wow. Next page.
Chapter 4, Like I've Been There Before. It was so special, it felt like we'd all been together in a previous life or something, or in a future life, but certainly this one. This was a real day, but a day that dreams were made of. For the longest time, I didn't really want to talk too much about friends. Partly that was because I'd done plenty of other stuff too, but all anyone ever wanted to talk about was Chandler. It's like James Taylor talking about fire and rain, a gruesome little tale if you've ever heard what that's about. It's like a band who've written a brilliant new album, but all anyone wants to hear when they play live is the hits. I always admired Kurt Cobain's refusal to play Smells Like Teen Spirit or Led Zeppelin's refusal to play Stairway to Heaven. The New York Times once said that Friends sticks to Perry like a sweaty shirt. They weren't right about that. In fact, that's just fucking cruel. But they weren't the only ones to think it. I was so good at something, yet I was being penalized for it. I left my blood, sweat, and tears on stage every Friday night. We all did. And that should be a good thing, not something that says we can only excel at that. I'm not complaining. If you are going to be typecast, that's the way to do it.
Real quickly, Solo, what's addiction? Right. But in recent years, I've come to understand just what friends means to people. And we knew from the very start that it was something very, very special. I was the last actor to be cast in the entire pilot season of 1994. In fact, I got the gig on the actual final day of pilot season. With LAX 2194 thankfully in the rearview mirror, I was free to be Chandler Bing. The following Monday, after the Friday I was hired, was day one of my new life. This was big, and I guess we all felt that way because we all showed up on dead on time. Well, Matt LeBlanc was first, and every single day. Aniston last, every single day. The cars got nicer, but the order stayed the same. We sat around the table and we all met each other for the first time. That is, except me and Jennifer Aniston. Jennifer and I had met through mutual acquaintances about 3 years earlier. I was immediately taken by her. How could I not be? And liked her. And I got the sense she was intrigued too. Maybe it was going to be something. Back then, I got 2 jobs in one day. One was Haywire, America's Funniest Home Videos type show, and the other was a sitcom. So I called Jennifer and I said, "You're the first person I wanted to tell this to." Bad idea. I could feel ice forming through the phone. Looking back, it was clear that this made her think I liked her too much or in the wrong kind of way. And I only compounded the error by then asking her out. She declined, which made it very difficult to actually go out with her, but said that she'd love to be friends with me. And I compounded the compound by blurting, "We can't be friends." Oh my God. Next page.
Now, a few years later, ironically, we were friends. Fortunately, even though I was still attracted to her and thought she was so great that first day, we were able to sail right past the past and focus on the fact that we had both gotten the best job Hollywood had to offer. Everyone else was brand new to me. Courtney Cox was wearing a yellow dress and was cripplingly beautiful.
Cripplingly.
Cripplingly, thank you, cripplingly beautiful. I had heard about Lisa Kudrow from a mutual friend, and she was just as gorgeous and hilarious and incredibly smart as my friend had said. Maddie LeBlanc was nice and a cool customer, and David Schwimmer had had his hair cut really short. He had been playing Pontius Pilate for his theater troupe in Chicago. Over his hangdog face and was incredibly funny right away, warm and smart and creative. After me, he was the guy who pitched the most jokes. I probably pitched 10 jokes a day, and 2 of them got in. They weren't just jokes for me. I'd pitch jokes for everybody. I'd go up to Lisa and say, it might be funny if you tried to say this, and she'd try it. The director, Jimmy Burrows, was the best in the business too. He directed both Taxi and Cheers. He knew instinctually that job one for us was to get to know each other and generate chemistry. Immediately, there was electricity in the air. I'd always wanted to be the only funny one, but now at the ripe old age of 24, I quickly realized that it's better if everyone is funny. I could already tell that this was going to be big. I knew it from the start, but I didn't say anything out loud. Partly, that was because it isn't unheard of for an actor to fuck up a table read so badly that they were politely asked to leave before a minute of shooting took place. But that would be tomorrow. For now, Jimmy took the 6 of us to Monica's apartment
set and told us just to talk to each other. And so we did. We talked and joked about romance, our careers, our loves, our losses, and the bond that Jimmy knew would be critical had begun. The 6 of us ate lunch together outside on a beautiful spring day. As we ate, Courtney, the only established name of the group back then, said, "There are no stars here. This is an ensemble show. We're all supposed to be friends." Given her status, she'd been on Family Ties and in Ace Ventura and in a guest spot on Seinfeld and had danced with Bruce Springsteen in the video for Dancing in the Dark. She could have been everything and everybody. She could easily have said, "I'm the star." Hell, she could have had her lunch somewhere else, and we would have to have been fine with it. Instead, she simply said, "Let's really work together and get to know each other." She said it's what she noticed about how it worked on Seinfeld, and she wanted it to be true about Friends too. So we did what she suggested. From that first morning, we were inseparable. We ate every meal together, played poker. At the start, I was full on the joke man, cracking gags like a comedy machine whenever I could, probably to the annoyance of everyone, trying to get everybody to like me because of how funny I was. Because why else would anybody like me? It would take 15 years for me to learn that I didn't need to be a joke machine. That afternoon, that first afternoon, we were assigned dressing rooms, which eventually didn't matter because we were never in them. We were always together, and we all walked to next page.
Our cars and said goodbye that first evening. I remember thinking, I'm happy. This was not an emotion I was altogether used to. That night, I called my friends, except for Craig Bierko, given what had happened, and told them what a wonderful day I'd had. Then I spent yet another night at college, the Formosa, as was my custom. I remember saying that night that I was on a show that was so good it was better than anything I could have dreamed of writing myself. My friends were also happy for me, but even then I could sense a shift. Maybe I was growing out of this Formosa thing. I had a life-changing job that I had to, hell, desperately wanted to report to in the morning, so I drank far less than usual. My apartment even had a life cycle in the back, and I used it every day, dropping about 10 pounds of baby alcohol fat between the pilot and the first episode. That night, I went to bed thinking, I can't wait to get back there tomorrow. Next morning, as I drove from Sunset and Doheny over the Cahuenga Pass to the Warner Brothers lot in Burbank, I realized I was leaning toward the windshield as I drove. I wanted to be there. That would be true for the next decade. Day 2 was big. We reported to a new building, Building 40, for our first table read. I was nervous and excited and yet confident too. I had always been good at table reads, but there was still the looming thought that anyone could be fired and replaced. Lisa Kudrow, for example, had originally been cast as Roz on Frasier, but had been fired during the rehearsal process by none other than Friends director Jimmy Burrows.
Hmm.
If I know, if jokes didn't land or something was off, well, anybody could be.
Replaced before they'd even properly found their way to their dressing room. Interesting story. But I knew Chandler. I could shake hands with Chandler. I was him. And I looked a hell of a lot like him, too. That day, the room was packed. In fact, it was standing room only. There were writers, executives, network people. There must have been 100 people in the room, but I was a song and dance man, and this is where I excelled. We got reacquainted with Marta Kaufman, David Crane, and Kevin Bright, the people behind the show, and who had hired us. And almost instantly, we all felt they were our parental figures. Can you? There's a little bit of noise in the background. Can you mute?
Sorry, it's my
Oh, no,
dog. Yeah.
no problem, no problem. Before the table read began, we all went around the room introducing ourselves and saying what we did for the show. Then it was time to read. How would it go? Would the chemistry we'd only just started to create show up, or were we just 6 young hopefuls making believe that this would be our big break? We needn't have worried. We were ready. The universe was ready. We were pros. The lines flew out of our mouths. No one made a mistake. All the jokes landed. We finished to thunderous applause. Everyone could smell money. The cast could smell fame. After the read, the 6 of us piled into a van and were brought to the actual set at stage 24 to begin rehearsing. But it was the run through at the end of the day that sealed the deal. The jokes, the chemistry, the script, the direction, everything was magical. All the elements seemed to meld into one hilarious, cogent, powerful whole, and we all knew it. This show was going to work, and it was going to change everyone's lives forever. I swear there was a
Popping sound. If you listened really closely, you could hear it. It was the sound of people's dreams coming true. It was everything I thought I wanted. I was going to fill all the holes with friends like us. Fuck Charlie Sheen. I was going to be so famous that all the pain I carried with me would melt like frost in sunlight, and any new threats would bounce off me as though this show was a force field I could cloak myself in. There is an unwritten law in show business that to be funny, you had to either look funny or be older. But here were 6 attractive people, all in their 20s, all knocking every joke out of the park. That evening, I drove home on a cloud. There was no traffic. All the lights were green. A trip that should have taken half an hour took 15 minutes. The attention that I always felt had eluded me was about to fill every corner of my life, like a room illuminated by a flash of lightning. People were going to like me now. I was going to be enough. I mattered. I wasn't too needy. I was a star. Nothing was going to stop us now. No one walking into a ballroom would have to turn around and notice me. All eyes would be on me now, not the pretty woman walking 3 feet in front of me. We rehearsed the rest of the week, and it was then that we began to notice something else. I have been an actor since 1985, and that has never happened before or since, and it was beautiful. The bosses were not in the least tyrannical. In fact, it was a truly creative atmosphere. We could pitch jokes, and the best joke won, no matter where it came from. The craft services lady said something funny. Put it in. It didn't matter. So not only was I there as an actor, but my creative juices were flowing too.
The creators took each one of us out for lunch too, to get to know us, so they could incorporate some aspects of our real personalities into the show. At my lunch, I said two things. One, that even though I considered myself not unattractive, I had terrible luck with women, and that my relationships tended toward the disastrous. And two, that I was not comfortable in any silence at all. I have to break any such moment with a joke. And this became a built-in excuse for Chandler being to be funny, perfect for a sitcom. And Chandler wasn't much good with women either, as he shouts at Janice as she leaves his apartment. I've scared you. I've said too much. I'm awkward and hopeless and desperate for love. But think of a better character for a sitcom, someone who is uncomfortable in silence and has to break the silence with a joke. It was all too true, both for Chandler and for me. Fairly early in the making of Friends, I realized that I was still crushing badly on Jennifer Aniston. Our hellos and goodbyes became awkward. And then I'd ask myself, how long can I look at her? Is 3 seconds too long? But that shadow disappeared in the hot glow of the show. That and her deafening lack of interest. On tape nights, nobody made a mistake. We might have run scenes over if a joke didn't land. All the writers would huddle together and rewrite, but mistakes just never happen. So many shows have blooper reels, but there are only a few for Friends. From the pilot on, in fact, that pilot was error-free. We were the New York Yankees, slick, professional, top of our game from the very start. We were ready. And I was talking in a way that no one had talked in sitcoms before, hitting odd emphasis, picking a word in a sentence you might not imagine was the beat, utilizing, next page.
The Murray Perry cadence. I didn't know it yet, but my way of speaking would filter into the culture across the next few decades. For now, though, I was just trying to find interesting ways into lines that were already funny, but that I thought I could truly make dance. Marta Kaufman was later to say that the writers would underline the word not usually emphasized in a sentence just to see what I would do with it. Even when there were issues with the characters, we were able to work them out to the point where the solutions created their own iconic moments. When I first read the script, I knew it was different because it was so character-driven and smart. But early on, Matt LeBlanc was concerned that because he was this kind of cool, macho ladies' man in the script, Rachel, Monica, and Phoebe wouldn't be friends with him, wouldn't like him that much, and that made his character less believable. It didn't help that Matt was very good looking. He had leading man looks, even to the point where I was a little jealous of that when I first saw him. But he was so nice and funny that any jealousy I had soon disappeared. But still, he hadn't been able to find the right way into his character. He was the one character in the show that had not been properly defined. He was described as a cool Pacino type, out of work actor. So that's how he was playing it, but it still wasn't working. At one point during a wardrobe session, he put on brown leather pants, which were thankfully nixed by everyone, especially Marta, who was in charge. Then came the moment early in the run where he has an exchange with Courtney about a woman he's been seeing and how the sex wasn't working out. Courtney asks him if he's thought of being there for the girl, and
Joey just simply doesn't understand the concept. That was the moment he turned from being a ladies' man to a lovable, useless, dumb puppy. He underlined this by doing a running joke of the things being repeated to him and him not following them. He had found his position in the show, which was basically as a big dumb brother to Rachel, Monica, and Phoebe. Everyone was in place. Occasionally, Matt would come to my dressing room, mostly during season 1, and ask me how to say his lines, and I would tell him, and he would go downstairs and he would nail it. But he gets most improved player because by season 10, I was going into his room and asking him how he would say certain of my lines. This was all to come. For now, we were filming shows ahead of our fall 1994 air date, and as yet, no one knew who we were. With the shows in the can, all that was left to find out was our first time slot. NBC knew that they had something special, so they put us right between Mad About You and Seinfeld. That was the perfect spot, plumb. This was before streaming, so your time slot was crucial. It was still the days of appointment TV when folks would rush home to catch the 8 p.m. show or the 9 p.m. show, and people organized their lives around their shows, not the other way around. So 8:30 p.m. on a Thursday between two huge shows was a massive deal. We flew to New York on the Warner Brothers jet for the upfronts. The upfronts, I've been doing upfront. The upfronts are when a show is presented to the affiliates. It was on this trip that they told us the name of the show was now Friends. When they renamed it, I thought it was a horrible idea. I never said I was a smart person. And Friends was a smash with the affiliates. 2, everything was lining up. In New York, we were, next page,
Celebrating, getting drunk, partying, then on to Chicago for more upfronts, more partying. Then we had to wait a summer before the show first aired. I filled that summer with 3 notable things: gambling in Vegas at the behest of Jimmy Burrows, a trip to Mexico on my own, and a makeout session in a closet with Gwyneth Paltrow. I was back in Williamstown, Massachusetts when I met Gwyneth. She was doing a play there, and I was visiting my grandfather. At some big party, we slipped off into a broom cupboard and made out. We were both still unknown enough that it didn't make it to the tabloids, but with that in mind, it fell to Jimmy Burrows to give me a reality check. After the upfronts, it was clear the show was going to be a hit, so Jimmy flew us all to Vegas on the jet. We watched the pilot of Friends on the way, and once we arrived, he gave us each $100 and told us to gamble it and have fun, because once the show aired in the fall, we'd never be able to do it again. Your lives are going to utterly change, Jimmy said, so do some things in public now, because once you're as famous as you're about to be, you'll never be able to do them again. And that's what we did. We 6 new friends got drunk and gambled and wandered through the casinos, just 6 close strangers on a weekend trip, unknown to anyone, no one asking for autographs or photos, none of us being chased by paparazzi, a million miles from what was coming, which was every single moment of our lives being documented in public for all to see forever. I still wanted fame, but already I could taste a wild and weird flavor in the air. Would fame, that elusive lover, really fill all the holes I carried around with me? What
would it be like to not be able to put 20 on black in some harsh lit casino, a vodka tonic in my hand without someone shouting, Matthew Perry just put 20 on black, everyone come and see. It was the last summer of my life when I could make out at a party with a beautiful young woman called Gwyneth, and no one save Gwyneth and I cared. Would the payoff be worth it? Would giving up a normal life be worth the price paid of people digging through my trash, clicking pictures through telephoto lenses at me, at my worst or best, or everything in between? Would I ever again be able to anonymously replicate my 21st birthday when at the Sofitel across from the Beverly Center, I drunk 7 and 7s, poured a bottle of wine into a huge brandy snifter, you know, the one they put on the piano for tips. Oh my God. Ordered a cab, gotten into the back of the cab with the snifter, still sipping the wine, tried to give the directions to my home when I could only pronounce the letter L, only for the guy up front to yell, what the fuck are you doing? Because he wasn't a cab driver. It was just some random car. Most important, would these holes get filled? Would I want to trade places with David Pressman or Craig Bierko, or they with me? What would I tell them down the line when my name became a shorthand for stand-up comedians and late-night hosts, a shorthand that meant addict? What would I tell them when complete strangers hated me, loved me, and everything in between? What would I tell them? And What would I tell God when he reminded me of my prayer, the one I'd whisper 3 weeks, the one I'd whispered 3 weeks before I got Friends? Next page.
God, you can do whatever you want to me. Just please make me famous. He was about to keep one half of the bargain, but this also meant he could do whatever he wanted with me as the other half. I was completely at the mercy of a God who was sometimes merciful and sometimes thought it was perfectly fine to put his own son on a fucking cross. Which way would he choose for me? Which one would St. Peter pick? The gold, the red, or the blue? I guess I was about to find out. With Jimmy Burrows' words about impending fame still ringing in my ears, I figured I should take one last trip as an anonymous person. Late in the summer of 1994, I flew alone to Mexico. I'd recently broken up with my girlfriend Gabby and decided to go on a booze cruise solo. In Cabo, I wandered about getting drunk and calling girls in LA from my room. Then each night on the cruise, I'd head to some kind of weird party where everybody was all nervous until they brought out a jug of booze. Then it was on. I was lonely. I didn't get laid. It was hot in Cabo, but cold inside me. I could feel God watching me, waiting. The most unnerving part was I knew God was
Omniscient.
omniscient. Thank you, Glenn. What would I do without you today? Which meant that he knew already what he had in store for me. Friends premiered on Thursday, September 22, 1994. It initially hit number 17 in the rankings, which was really good for a brand new show. The reviews were mostly stellar too. Friends promises to be offbeat and seductive. The cast is appealing. The dialogue is pitch
perfect. 1994. Friends comes as close to a new series can get to having everything. The New York Times. Friends has so many good moves that there's really nothing to dislike. It's all so light and frothy that each episode you may be hard pressed to recall precisely what went on, except that you laughed a lot. Los Angeles Times. A game cast delivers the barrage of banter with an arch coyness that suggests they think they're in some Gen X Neil Simon play. People, if fans of Mad About You and Seinfeld can handle the age difference, they should feel right at home with this six as they sit around riffing on life, love, relationships, jobs, and each other. The Baltimore Sun. A couple of reviews hated it. One character says he dreamed he had a telephone for a penis, and when it rang, it turns out it's my mother. And this is in the first 5 minutes. It's a ghastly creation, so bad. The stars include that cute Courtney Cox. Hold on. Hold on. Okay, I think I got him. All right, sorry. Let's see. I'm going to start this one review over. One character says he dreamed he had a telephone for a penis, and when it rang, it turns out it's my mother. And this is in the first 5 minutes. It's a ghastly creation, so bad the stars include that cute Courtney Cox, formerly funny David Schwimmer, Lisa Kudrow, Matt LeBlanc, and Matthew Perry. They all look nice, and it's sad to see them degrading themselves. The Washington Post. Oh my God. Anemic and unworthy of its Thursday night time slot. Next page.
And that was from the Hartford Courant. But then Dick Rowe, an A&R man from Decca and turning down the Beatles, told Brian Epstein in 1961 that guitar groups are on their way out. I wonder how those reviewers feel now, having dissed arguably the most beloved show of all time. They really missed the boat on that one. Had they also hated Seinfeld, MASH, Cheers, St. Elsewhere? We were not on our way out. We were the very definition of prime time, when prime time still mattered. The gold rush of television. Even more important than the great reviews, we dropped only about 20% of the audience for Mad About You, which was an incredibly strong performance for a new show. By episode 6, we were beating Mad About You, which meant we were a smash hit. Pretty soon we hit the top 10, then the top 5, and we wouldn't leave the top 5 for a decade. This is unheard of still. So here it was, fame. Just as we predicted, Friends was huge, and I couldn't jeopardize that. I loved my co actors. I loved the scripts. I loved everything about the show. Sorry, we have dogs in the background. But I
No,
was also I was also struggling with my addictions, which only added to my sense of shame. I had a secret and no one could know. And even making the shows could be painful. As I admitted at the reunion in 2020, I felt like I was going to die if the live audience didn't laugh. And it's not healthy for sure, but I would sometimes say a line and they wouldn't laugh. And I would sweat and just like go into convulsions. If I didn't get the laugh I was supposed to get, I would freak out. I felt like that every single night. This pressure left me in a bad place. And I also knew that of the 6 people making that show, only one of them
was sick. The fame I'd yearned, the fame I'd yearned for had arrived, though in London, it was as if we were the Beatles, with people outside our hotel room screaming, and the show ended up covering the globe. In late October 1995, between the airing of episodes 5 and 6 of season 2, I flew to New York to notch my first appearance on The Late Show. When going on Letterman was a pinnacle of pop culture fame. I was in a dark suit. At one point, Letterman would finger my lapel and describe it as late 1960s British invasion kind of mod. Ladies and gentlemen, this man is on the #1 show in America. Please welcome Matthew Perry. I sauntered out, a star. I had made it, but I was so nervous I could barely stand, which was why I was quite happy to be sitting. I shook hands with Mr. Letterman and dove into my well-rehearsed routine, a long description of a typical Gilligan's Island episode. I somehow swung it so that I had told the same story to Yasser Arafat, who was staying in my hotel. It was during the Yasser Arafat. That's so random. It was during the 50th anniversary of the UN, and everyone was in town. This was just the kind of bizarre, wordy story Letterman loved. The laughs landed. I even got Dave to crack a few times, and my earth-shattering fear had been properly hidden. Everything was good. Everything was golden. I had just turned 25. I was in the biggest sitcom on the planet. I was in a hotel in New York watching as the world leaders were hustled into elevators by flanks of security, putting on a $1,000 suit ahead of joshing it up with David Letterman. This was fame. And just beyond the glare of the city, beyond the skyscrapers and the faint stars twinkling beyond the midtown skies, God looked down on me. Just next page.
waiting it out. He's got all the time in the world. Fuck, he invented time. He wouldn't forget. Something was looming. I had an idea what it was, but I didn't know for sure. Something to do with drinking every night, but just how bad was it going to be? The juggernaut was just getting going, though. The show was a cultural touchstone. We were getting mobbed everywhere we went. David Schwimmer would later tell the story that he was accosted by a gaggle of young women on the street who physically pushed his girlfriend out of the way to get near him. By late 1995, right around the time of the Letterman appearance, I also had a new and very famous girlfriend of my own. But before we get there, I had some unfinished business with the other Chandler. I didn't hear from Craig Bierko for 2 years after I got Chandler. He had moved to New York and we lost touch. Best Friends, the show he chose over Friends like us, had gone nowhere. Later, Warren Littlefield, former New York president of NBC, wrote in his memoir about Craig not choosing Friends. Thank God there was something snidely whiplash about Craig Bierko. He seemed to have a lot of anger underneath. The attractive leading man who you love and can do comedy is very rare. He was working steadily. He'd eventually star in The Music Man on Broadway and The Long Kiss Goodnight with Gina Davis and Sam Jackson, among a lot of other really awesome stuff. But the divergence of our fortunes had left our friendship in flames. I missed him. He was still the quickest comedic mind I'd ever met, and I loved that, and much else about him. I could no longer go to the Formosa just to hang
out either. I missed that life too. I'd taken to drinking alone in my apartment because that was safest. The illness was deepening, but I couldn't see it, not then. And if anyone saw how much I was drinking, they might be alarmed and ask me to stop. And stopping was, of course, impossible. One day, though, Craig Bierko called me out of the blue. He wanted to come by and see me. I was delighted but apprehensive. You know, that feeling when you end up dating someone your best friend had a crush on? It felt like that. I'd taken the role he could and should have taken, and everything had gone gold for me. Then platinum, then some other rare metal as yet undiscovered. I had no idea how a meeting with my former friend would go. Marta Kaufman would later comment, "We saw a countless number of actors for Chandler, but things happened as they were supposed to happen." But I couldn't say anything like that to Craig because the thing that was supposed to happen, the miracle, had happened to me, not to him. That had been his choice, not mine. When he got to my apartment, the tension was high. Craig spoke first. "I want you to know that I'm very sorry for not speaking to you for 2 years," he said. I simply could not handle that you got rich and famous doing that role that I turned down. We were both good enough to get that role, and so I just could not handle it." I heard him out. There was a silence. The traffic on Sunset was backing up all the way to the Fred Segal in La Cienega. I decided I wouldn't mention Fred Segal. Next page.
I hated what I was actually about to say, but I had to say it. I said, "You know what, Craig? It doesn't do what we all thought it would. It doesn't fix anything." What a sobering thought for a 26-year-old who had only ever wanted fame and had only just realized that fame hadn't filled all the holes at all. No, what had no, what had filled the holes was vodka. Craig stared at me. I don't think he believed me. I still don't think he believes me. I think you actually have to have all of your dreams come true to realize they are the wrong dreams. Later, when I was promoting Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, I told The Guardian, "I've been on the least watched show in the history of television, Second Chance in 1987, and the most watched, Friends, and none of it really did what I thought it was going to do, what it was going to do to my life. Given everything, there is no way I wouldn't change places with Craig and David Pressman and the guy in the gas station down the block. I'd change places with all of them in a minute and forever if only I could not be who I am, the way I am, bound on this wheel of fire. They don't have a brain that wants them dead. They slept fine at night. I don't expect that would make them feel any better about the choices they made, the way their lives went. I would give it all up not to feel this way. I think about it all the time. It's no idle thought. It's a cold-hearted fact. That Faustian prayer I made was a stupid one, the prayer of a child. It was not based on anything real, but it became real. I have the money, the recognizability, and the near-death experiences to prove it."
Yeah, I figured that would probably, it sounded like it was coming to an end, that chapter.
Yeah.
Wow. So it's, I gotta say, I find myself as we're reading, forgetting that he died. He seems so alive,
Yeah, right. Same. It's really mind-boggling to think that we're looking at this sort of from a post-mortem, standpoint, and reading through all of this. It brings it all to life in such a way that is, in his own way, so humorous um, and so interesting. I mean, this is probably one of the better books I've read in a very long time, I think. And sort of unraveling the whole thing about his character and his insecurities, and the way that he always feels abandoned and insecure and just not good enough, even though he's recognized he is now in the midst of this enormous show, has all this fame and money, and still feels that gnawing sort of insecurity inside.
Well, he was empty inside.
Empty, yes.
He was empty, and we, I remember I wrote in the chat. I had a group of friends. My first job after college, when I got my communications degree was at DirecTV. Me and several of my friends in the early days of DirecTV, when it was, we basically launched the service. We all would get together every Thursday night, and we called it Seinfeld night, but Friends was one of the highlights of that night. And it would start with, I don't remember the entire lineup, but I remember that it was like this really, amazing lineup. And we, of course, were not the only friends who would get together to watch those shows. And so I remember those early days, and I remember, because I had already been through rehab myself, and I was really very active in AA at the time, and I would sponsor people. I could recognize it on him. And he was my favorite character. I mean, he was my favorite character on that show. I've always been more attracted to the kind of quirky, silly guys. And that's who he was. And but I still remember even noticing, I just saw something in him. I saw him hurting. Even on the show, like you could tell that he's that guy. And it's just so interesting that they kind of wrote a character that was so like him that then it really became him, And yes, you're right, Patricia. It made him very vulnerable. It, like, addiction, poverty, life circumstances make people vulnerable. And when vultures fucking come in and take advantage of that, there's just no, and I think that's been done to a lot of star addicted stars. I think of Amy Winehouse, right? She was already addicted, but her family, in my view, kept her addicted because it worked for them, and then Matthew in this book talks about Michael Jackson dying with propofol, and that his doctor was convicted, if I recall correctly. And now we have this, and there's other instances where we know that people maybe even Marilyn Monroe, Marilyn Monroe, they don't know how, like, they were pilling her up. They were pilling up Judy Garland. They've been doing this since time immemorial. So it just feels like this should be a hearkening moment for Hollywood. Among the many hearkening moments they need to have, this is one of the big ones, is stop keeping your stars addicted just for your own fucking bottom line. You there?
Yes, absolutely. I think it'll be interesting to see how, this whole legal thing plays out.
Yeah.
And, what happens there. I think it will be, as you say, a hearkening moment. Hopefully it'll be a hearkening moment.
I think I heard you turning pages. Are you actually reading from the book?
I do have the book in front of me. So yeah. And the reason I do that is so I can, I like to read ahead just a little bit. So I can, sorry if there was noise in the background.
Oh, no.
But yeah, I just so I can sort of get my head around what's going to happen next. But
right.
the thing about the book is that there's some really cool photos in here. I don't know if you have the book yourself, Lynn, but there's some really amazing photos in here.
I don't. Maybe.
Oh yeah.
I wonder if there's a way for I'd like
I can share them. Yeah.
Digitally so that I can share them here.
Yeah, let me see what I can do. Maybe I can just take some photos and send them over to you. But there's probably, I want to say 20 pages.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Beautiful. Yeah. His father and, when he was younger playing tennis. Yeah. I mean, his whole family, he talks about his mother and father and how handsome and beautiful they were. Yeah, it's really, it's kind of tugs at your heart.
Yeah.
A little bit. Yeah. Let me see what I can do.
I agree. It's well written. And so that's what leads me to believe that he had either a ghostwriter or a very strong editor. And what I mean by that is he probably, like, you can't be everything to all people. I highly doubt that he was somebody who could author an entire book by himself. You know what I mean? So, but I'm more than confident that those are all his stories and all his jokes and his, he sounds like, he's a perfectionist a bit with his work. So I'm sure every single word was, approved by him, sanctioned by him. But I would just have to believe that there was an author or really, really strong. Sometimes when you have a very strong editor, they will put more work into, and when you have somebody like Matthew Perry, so they'll put more work into making sure the book is readable for audiences, that has a flow, it has a story arc, that, there's consistency across the pages and stuff like that. So
Right.
yes, it is. Yes, it is Patricia. The other voice is Cinnamon.
Hello, Patricia.
And yeah, Teacup, I grew up in like a lower middle class home, meaning that, like, I really did get everything I needed, but pennies were tight. It's like we couldn't go out and I couldn't. I got everything I needed and then some, but I didn't get a lot. You know what I'm saying?
No, same here.
When I grew up and then I graduated from college, and then I, got married, and we were definitely in the 1%, like I could spend money without thinking about it. But then I got divorced, and I dated people who had a completely different upbringing than me. And it really showed me how they viewed money and how they viewed rich people, and how they viewed, none of them were like criminals or anything like that, but they understood why criminals become criminals, in those circumstances, is because they feel like, hey, you're taking it all. I don't have anything. I need to feed my family, or I need to, whatever. So poverty breeds crime. So yeah, that's right, PKC. I had everything I needed. Of course I was a brat, and I would say, I need that, and you're not giving it to me. I was a total brat. I was a complete brat as a teenager, but I know that, my mom worked at the same company for 40 years, and she did that just to make sure we got what we needed, and she hated that job. So, being in a job for 40 years, and that's the other thing that an important highlight from Matthew's book that we were just reading, is how he talked about it wasn't a chore for him to go to work every day. The only chore for him, because he loved it. He loved it so much. The chore for him was dealing with his own addiction while going to work. That was the big terrible thing, obviously, right?
Right. And, I think, he began to, you could tell in the book that he had this sense of fulfillment in his work, and his involvement in, like, contributing to the jokes and the funny lines and to the script really brought him, like, a lot of joy and happiness. And that, I think, in turn, as he talks about, led to, a bit of a reduction in his drinking habits. He lost some weight and, all of that. But we know that wasn't it didn't last.
No, for for that, you have to have an almost complete paradigm shift in your own mind and your own emotional centeredness, and you have to have a complete change of lifestyle. And when you haven't done those things, when you haven't dealt with the inner turmoil, and then you become incredibly wealthy, there's two things. One is, well, I'm incredibly wealthy. Why it doesn't all these other things don't matter anymore. If I'm wealthy, I don't have to worry about all that other stuff, which is not true, but that's the way people think. And I talked about this before. I worked with so many people in the tech industry who were drunk on their own success. They thought, I've got life mastered. I have in all of my life mastered, not because I have wealth. And then they find out later it's just so not true. So anyway, and I knew that there was a second point, but I forgot that point, so I'm not going to try to find it now. Solo says, I was so excited that I got myself through 4 years of college to be a nurse, and I got told, hey, on top of everything, you have MS. Yeah, that sucks. But you have jokes. Yeah, you do have jokes, Solo. You definitely do.
Solo, it's funny that you say my whole life I've been a, oh, shoot, let's hit the food pantry kind of girl.
Yeah. Yeah.
I get that.
She does, Patricia. I agree with that. I really, really love the way, I don't know if your voice sounds the same in person, but the way it comes across on YouTube through the, through the microphones and stuff, it's very lyrical. It's a very lyrical voice. Yeah.
You guys, thank you. I do some, videos, and I love, I love speaking to people. I've been told in the past that, my voice is sort of pleasing. I don't, the thing is, I don't hear it myself. I hear my voice is kind of weird and scratchy, and I don't know, but thank you for saying that. That's really kind. That's really kind.
I used to hate hearing my voice before. I hated the sound of my voice. Now I'm used to it, now that I've done so many videos, and also because of my singing, I got used to my voice. And so I think it's when you do, like when you get used to hearing your voice on videos and stuff, you start to go, oh, okay, that's my voice. It's okay. It's my voice,
Yeah, and what's funny is I can listen to my voice, and it's okay. I can't watch myself on video. I do a lot of video. I never go back and watch it, and I know it's kind of silly, but I don't know, there's something about that.
Totally natural, completely natural. I made this video on my other channel once that it got a lot of views. It was about Amber Heard and Johnny Depp.
Yes.
And one night I noticed that there were these guys streaming, these two guys. I'd never seen them before in my life. And they were on this big channel, and they were streaming my video and commenting on it, and I couldn't watch it. I was like, oh my God, I can't watch this.
So weird, right?
I can't handle it. Yeah.
I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is.
To this day, I haven't watched it. I have no idea what their commentary was, whether it was good or bad. I couldn't handle seeing two people with in this particular video. I was cammed up, so it was my face, and they're talking, and I was like, I can't.
That's so funny. It's so funny.
Anyway, so I do want to get back to streaming. I had some house things happen. I lost like 3-4 days of work. And then the whole Donna Adelson trial didn't go off. If you guys let me know what trials you're looking forward to, because I do want to start streaming those again. And if you haven't noticed, I have gotten some really good views on the videos that I posted about Wade Wilson.
Oh my gosh. Let me just say that you have taken me into the Wade Wilson rabbit hole.
It's crazy, man.
It is wild. It is wild. And, he's got like several women, right? It's not just like the 3 or 4 that, we know about, but there's more. And this guy is just unbelievable. The thing that I think bothers me even more is not only, I mean, he's clearly, just, not a good guy, right? The women, but the way the women react to him, that they're susceptible to the love bombing, or what do you call it? The take bombing.
Yeah.
And it's like, how can you fall for this? But then on the other hand, I can totally see it too, given where they may come from, and, what their backgrounds, and, a couple of them have been in prison, or they've had, difficult lives. And so I get it, but it's still, it's like I said, I think I left a message. I'm laughing at the same time because your little captions are so funny.
I'm trying to get people to see, you know, like a person like this who's just gonna lie, so he can take. This is what he's really thinking. You know,
Right.
this is the pure motive behind what he's about to say to you. I don't think I've ever heard a person recorded doing so many love bombs and so many or take bombs at a time. I mean, I was astounded. In fact, I thought that this last video I was going to do was going to be like half hour, 45 minutes. It ended up being an hour because he love bombed so fucking much. It's crazy.
How many were there? There were like 100 and what, 30s? I don't know how many. 200. Yeah.
And I didn't really even count all of them. I'm sure I missed them. And the thing is that he does an entire like paragraph of love bombing. So you can't just, you know, where and so what I tried to count were just the ones where it was totally out of the blue or totally unnecessary, but you know that he's trying to elevate, he's trying to escalate the emotions of the conversation to hook them more. And for some women that just works. It
Absolutely.
just works. And they can overlook, you know, some people are just as bad as he is. And so they're okay with overlooking the horrible things he's done. And that's just that's just how it is, you know?
Absolutely. I mean, I've been in a situation where I've been love bombed before and felt total victim to it. I look back on it now and think, how could I do that? But at the time, it fed something in me, right? And I mean, the guy was a total, jerk. But at the time, did I think that? No. At the time, it was like, oh, this is so great. And, he really cares about me. And I've never had anyone feel like this, blah, 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 in my head. And, it now, of course, I have a little wisdom on it, but yeah, I totally get it. And, you can tell like he is just thinking about the next thing for him. He's listening to the conversation, he's listening to the feedback, and he's just thinking about how he can, just swoop in and deliver another love bomb.
Here's the thing with him. I don't even think he has to think about it anymore. It's just his way of being. That's
right. Yeah, you're right.
It like he is so practiced and so, for him, it's like mastering, it's like breathing to him. He doesn't even have to think about it. It just is who he is, which is so crazy. And I agree, Patricia. You know what? I will say this, Patricia, though. His laugh reminds me, and a lot of the way he talks and what he says reminds me a lot of Rocket Man. And if you guys don't know who I mean by Rocket Man, I'll tell you. But I mean, I swear to God, I've heard that woman laugh like that, and to love bomb like that, do all the things that he, I'm not accusing her of murder, of course. But you know what I'm saying? It reminds me of her. Do you know who I'm talking about?
I don't. Sorry.
Lana Oriani from Truth.
Oh, Lana. Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes.
Absolutely. I call her Rocket.
Okay. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Solo, I noticed that trial was on, but I literally was working so hard on this last video that I put out that I didn't watch that trial.
I watched the whole thing. That was unbelievable.
Really?
Yeah. Carly Gregg, I think was her name.
Right.
Yeah.
I saw, I noticed it was on. I couldn't watch that trial and make my video. So I was kind of bummed because I could see that it was interesting. So what was the craziest part of it?
It was all sort of crazy to me. I think the footage, the camera footage from the home of her coming in, and the whole thing was, she was pleading, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, someone in chat, but she was, her lawyers were pleading, she had a moment of insanity, right? Mm-hmm. And, but if you watch the footage, and thank God they had this, she walks in calmly, she walks around the house, she's letting the dogs out. She's looking around. She's trying to see, where her mother was. She goes into another room. I think she gets the gun. She walks into the room where her mother is. You hear 3 or 4 shots fired off, you hear screaming, and then she walks out and she sits down at the counter, at the kitchen counter, and starts to text. And we know now she was texting. She took her mother's phone and was texting her stepfather saying, "When are you going to be home, honey?" And she was waiting for him to come home. So the plan was to kill him too. And she did fire off a gun at him, but he was not, mortally injured or anything. He was hurt a little bit, but that was it. The interesting thing, and I felt creeped out about this, was that he testified and he stood up for her the whole time.
Wow.
Said she was, a smart, sweet girl her whole life and didn't know anything different, that this must, I don't know what all he said, but it was all very weird. And she got life.
Right. Life without parole. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think she was very surprised about the whole thing.
Yeah. I saw the capture of her face. It's always interesting to me when, you can like Charlie Adelson, listening to his calls, he literally was absolutely in total shock when he was found guilty. He thought he had everybody convinced. He thought he had talked his way. He was told he did a great job on the stand. Oh, you did great. You knocked it out of the park. He literally says in his jail calls that he was on cloud 9. And then he got this guilty plea. I mean, guilty verdict. And I'm like, that's because you're fucking delusional. And you got people just telling you what you want to hear. Like his lawyers clearly are basically part of the family, at least that one lawyer. So Sharon, to answer your question, I was saying Rocket Man, Lana, is a love bomber. She's just as, her behavior is just as toxic as Wade Wilson. But I am not accusing her of being a murderer. I'm not. I would never do that. I'm just saying their behavior is very similar. I see the same stuff. So anyway, we've been on for a while now. We're talking about a lot of other stuff, but I just wanted to let you all know I would keep a lookout on my other channel for me to to start streaming trials again. Not sure what is coming up soon or next, but I am going to start that soon, and I'm going to keep working on videos for this channel as well. It is a little bit hard to juggle for me personally. It's hard to juggle multiple channels because I get stressed very easily and I need to manage my stress. But I am always thinking about what can I do to bring my viewers together and understanding things, and to connect with you guys, because I love talking to you all. So
we love talking to you too.
All have a wonderful rest of your week. It's a good one. Also, who's not feeling well, I hope you feel better soon. Get over that flu, Sharon. And next week we will start with this next interlude, which is called Zoom. Okay. Whatever. We'll see what that's about. So thank you all for being here. And I will talk to you all very, very, very soon. Bye.